I appreciate you all standing up, but I don't think it's necessary. May Allah bless you for your kindness and for your honor. But I'm honored to be here nonetheless. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعيذ نفسي بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله الحمد لله الذي أنزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق ونور عرش أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبنا وسيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. I begin in Allah's name, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and the Almighty Lord who created us and joins upon us His prescriptions. And in the Holy Quran, which is the final prescription given unto man, He tells us on the 103rd chapter of the Quran, which is Surah Al-Asr, وَالْعَصْرِ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خَسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد. In this chapter, the 103rd chapter, it's very interesting in continuity with our conversations we've been having the last 4 nights, in that God swears in this chapter, and whenever God swears, He's making a very important point. And no one has more authority to swear than Him. For you can only swear on something which you own. When it's yours, you can swear. That's why swearing is not a good thing to do unless you want to emphasize the truth in the name of God, and what you're saying is truthful, then maybe we can say it. Otherwise, general swearing is not a good thing to do. Because it's when we swear too much between ourselves, we belittle the intensity and the quality of why we swear. Because swearing is something where you're cornered, where you now have to justify yourself. It's almost like a person who jokes too much. Then when they're serious, it's very hard to believe them because you don't know if they're joking, because they joke too much. Joking once in a while is good, but excessive joking, it belittles the quality of the person. So I know there's noise below us, that's called sound, it's all part of the environment. But inshallah we'll try to focus in this important hour that we have on, particularly I have many subjects to touch, and I know I'm going to open up Pandora's box with issues, but I think it's very healthy when we cogitate, reflect, and we open up issues such that it leads to more questions, but hopefully it also answers many, which is what progression is all about, especially mental, spiritual progression. Allah swears, wal-asr, by time, and time is an entity. It's not an infinite entity, it's a finite entity. We know time is a finite entity, and it's an extremely critical component of our existence. In fact, Einstein speaks about the time-space continuum. What's fascinating is that we think time is an environment that's really intangible, whereas in reality it has a tangibility factor to it too, such that space is connected with time. And time actually causes space to bend, which is something we can't understand often. You have to be really, really good in astrophysics to understand some of this stuff, but nonetheless we see that time actually is a finite element. It does affect our movements. It actually affects the shape of the universe, and it actually bends in time. Time causes it to bend, basically, known as the time-space continuum. And time is something you and I cannot escape. Our conversation, our thoughts, we cannot escape time. Even the verbiage that we use, we will always have this factor of where and when in all our conversation. When God created time. God created time. When God created time, Notice it's a paradoxical statement because when, the word when, is an element of time. And before time was created, there was no when. But we say when God created time. The problem we have there now is that God somehow is now bound in time because now He's creating time, and our mind says, well, there has to be time for Him to have created time. Notice this paradoxical thought that we have. And this is the reason for this reality of thoughts is that we are relative beings. We are intrinsically, innately bound in frames of references. It's impossible to escape frames of reference. Everything we think about, even in the world of science, the entire world of science is framed. I cannot talk about science unless I frame it. I cannot say this room is, let's say, 30 meters or 40 meters wide, right? If in your mind you don't have a frame of what a meter is, you won't know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what 30 means relative to 0, you won't know what 30 means. It's framed. My language is framed. I'm speaking English, it's a frame. If I speak another language, your mind, which may lack that frame, will not make sense. So our frames have to meet. Two frames have to meet for the conversation to make sense. Language. It's amazing, it's incredibly powerful. And we can't escape frames. So when we talk about polytheism, people who make shapes and forms of God, for example, they all know God cannot be described. The rational mind knows that that one absolute God, the infinite one, cannot be described. It's beyond frames. If you want to know God, shatter the frame. And there are only two possibilities when you and I shatter frames. One is it becomes nothing, the other it becomes infinite. There are only two possibilities. So if I negate my framework, time, matter, space, I destroy time, I destroy matter, I destroy space, I have two possible conclusions. One is I don't exist anymore, the universe doesn't exist, or whatever exists is not framed, which is absolute, which becomes infinite, and that's God. So you have two extremities, nothing and God, and we're in between it. Okay? It's very, I'm simplifying this, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Now, when we talk about people who make idols, you go to Hindus, for example, a typical Hindu guru will tell you God is one, but He manifests Himself through the frame and comes in shapes and forms. That's Hinduism. Our Christian brethren, for example, they love God, but they feel that God, in order to display Himself, since He's absolute, the Father, who is absolute and cannot be described, every Christian will tell you the Father is absolute, is infinite, indescribable. But God, in John 3:16, they say, loved us so much that He gave His Son. For God so loved the world, He gave His only Son. So that Son becomes a frame. Jesus, who they attribute as the Son of God, we don't, Muslims, we say no, He's the Prophet of God, but they say He's a Son of God, the one Son of God. What do? They frame God. They bring Him into time, matter, and space. Why? So that we, who are limited in time, matter, and space, can now touch God. It's a means to connect with God. It's a means to show love and affection. It's a transactional system now, where God is no longer this being that's beyond my conception. The human being wants to bring God into some concept, some form, some focus, some structure, such that I can touch Him, I can hold Him. You see? And then of course they take it further, where they are born and they die and they're risen again. But you will notice that the minute we do this with the absolute God, we are violating the absoluteness of God. And it's critical in Tawheed that we do not violate the absoluteness, the infinitude of God. For the minute we do that, and the minute we take a piece of God and make Him into some structure, what we've done is that we have belittled God. Because we've taken the absolute, almighty, omnipotent, all-powerful, and made Him less powerful, made Him focused, made Him tangible, such that He can die and be born. That's the beauty of Islam. Islam maintains its focus and principle and categorically rejects it. and says any deification of framing God in any form, shape is false, for that is not God. We go so far that our prophets and our imams tell us that God has infinite names. Description of God comes in many names. By the way, if you go to church, an Arabic church, you will see God is constantly called Allah, Allah, Allah. If you go to a Christian church among the Arabs and they're reading the Bible, God is called Allah. It's interesting, living in America, we have some Westerners will tell me, you're a Muslim, your God is Allah. I said, no, that's a universal name for God. If you're a Christian and go to an Arabic church, it's the same God. It's called Allah. Because the name of God, the absolute name is Allah, meaning the God. But if you go to the word La, in the actual meaning of the Arabic word, it means one who's most worthy of being loved. Allah is the one who is the absolute being who's most worthy of being loved, the most worthy of being worshipped, the most supreme in structure and authority. So what you find in Islam, we reject this notion because we say God created the frame. God maintains the frame. It is God who put time into action. It is God who gives time infinite values. For a finite entity cannot inherit infinite nature because it's intrinsically finite. How did it become infinite? It cannot. So anything that has a beginning, by rationality, must have an end. But yet you and I have been promised that though we have a beginning, we will not have an end in the sense of our continuity of existence for eternity. Like, for example, Ashab al-Jannah, right? Allah says, "Hum fiha khalidun," they will remain in it eternally. The eternal nature is impossible in the relative frame, except in the absolute. Only the absolute being, the infinite one, has eternity. Therefore, we know when we are existing forever, it is only because of Allah. And our potential to reach what we call infinite greatness, meaning we are constantly going to get better and better and better and closer to Allah, like an asymptote on a graph, that's only possible because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a rational argument that Allah says. And here Allah is swearing by time, called asr. So I'm explaining it hopefully with clarity, so that when you look at religions out there are thousands of religions out there, by the way, thousands. Major ones are the Abrahamic ones, of course, Hinduism, Buddhism also, the sub-major ones. But all these religions, when you go deep into it, you will see that the reason they have survived is they all project the ultimate desire to promote good. Christians want to promote good. Jews want to promote good. Hindus want to promote good. Buddhists want to promote good. This is why they survive in religion. For if they promoted evil, they would collapse. Because you cannot sustain evil. It has to come through the garb of good. So we're not talking about religions per se that they are evil. All these variations of religions, they have an element of good. What we have to argue and find within our spirit and soul is, I have A which is good, and I have B which is better. Now you ask any rational human being, I have A which is good and B which is better, I'm giving you an option, which are you going to choose? By all standards, we're going to choose B. Because though good is good, better is better. I mean, it's a redundant statement, but that's the truth. That you and I will always take something better than that which is lesser, though both are good. When we study the thousands of religions, you'll find that they all have the same desire. What is the desire? To attain happiness. To attain spiritual happiness. To attain comfort in this world and in the next world, whatever. Even Hindus who believe in reincarnation ultimately want to achieve nirvana, karma. They want to go through karma and achieve this nirvana such that they exist perpetually in the state of bliss and happiness. So there's one thing that's fundamental in all our souls, and if you study philosophy, you'll see philosophers' conversations are all about how to achieve internal happiness eternally. Simple as that. So Islam, among the religions, and Allah says, Inna dina inda Allahi al-Islam, the religion to God is al-Islam. What is this religion?
you will see that it has a foundation, the foundation of the divine oneness of God. And the moral argument is derived from this oneness of God. And there's a rationality that the minute we take God and we split him and put him into a frame and bring him into a structure, into some stone, statue, picture, object, what we've done is it may appear that we've just taken a physical entity and brought it down to a structure, but actually morally we have destroyed it. Because the minute God can do that, now you are altering the very moral arguments that are derived, because religion is derived from God. And here, by definition, I'm talking about divine religion, because religion has a generic definition, which is a way of life. But the minute there is a superstructural authority that comes from a divine authority, I'm talking about that religion, you will notice that any subordinate group that brings the law to mankind, it's a bankrupt system. For example, if I claim to be a representative of God, and then I start writing laws for mankind, my laws are bankrupt. Because I have violated the superstructure. I did not get the authority from the ultimate. I concocted it and I infiltrated it. And you notice most religion, there are people and persons or groups of persons that infiltrated in the middle, which took it astray and gave it a whole new dimension, which was not what is true. It has the element of good in it. Its superstructure generally has something good in it, but it has so many poison pills that it's dangerous for you to follow it, because now it starts to play with you. Now, God has allowed these variations of religions to exist because there is one thing sacred in God's creation that God maintains at all costs. Besides our existence, one of the greatest gifts God has given us as a human race is our free will, our ability to dictate our own destiny. If you read the Quran, when you and I read the Quran, inshallah, not if, but when you and I read the Quran, you will see from cover to cover, God is speaking to us as a human race intelligently. He questions us, He cajoles us, He rationalizes with us, He tries to promote us, He warns us, He shows us the dangers. It's an intelligent conversation. It's not a master-slave relationship, though God is master, and though we are His slaves, but the relationship is so elegant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala karramna bani Adam. Indeed, we honor the children of Adam. How? Just this conversation in the Quran is so intelligent that God is questioning me all the time. And God allows me to reject Him. And God says, لا يحزنك كفرهم إلينا مرجعهم فننبئهم بما عملوا إن الله عليم بذات الصدور نمتعهم قليلا ثم نضطرهم إلى عذاب غليظ. Do not, God is talking to the Holy Prophet, do not be disturbed by their rejection of the truth. لا يحزنك كفرهم. Because people who commit evil deeds, good people are repulsed by it. We cringe when we know somebody stole, somebody cheated, somebody is murdering, somebody is an oppressor. We dislike it. Our conscience bites us. It disturbs us. Allah in the Quran is saying to the Prophet, لا يحزنك كفرهم. Don't let what they are doing, which is my rejection and rejection of my prescription, لا يحزنك كفرهم. إلينا مرجعهم. They will all come back to me. فَنُنَبِّئُهُم بِمَا عَمِلُوا. And we will tell them what they have done. Meaning God is saying this is sacred. The free will, power, while on this earth, to dictate your own destiny is a sacred entity that will not be tampered with. SubhanAllah. How merciful God is. That He allows us within our lives to do whatever we want within the prescriptions of free will, to dictate and promote good and forbid evil, or promote evil and demote good. Those potentialities are precious to God and they're maintained. Now you and I have a problem many a times when we see people who are vicious, people who are oppressors, and we're praying to God, stop this guy. Oh God, destroy this evildoer, this tyrant king who's doing such harm to our societies. Do something, God, just zap him with a lightning bolt. And it's not happening. And you're praying every day, oh God, please, what should I do? God is telling me, what are you going to do? Oh, but God, you're almighty. What are you? A vegetable? You're pretty smart. You're pretty intelligent. You're pretty adept. You've been able to alter your environments and put air conditioners when it's very hot outside and put heaters when it's very cold outside. And you can fly like birds, get places very quickly. You're pretty smart. You can make guns and bombs and kill each other and chemicals that will alter the state of a mind. And you're pretty intelligent. What are you going to do? So often, we relinquish ourselves. No, God, you're the Almighty. It's amazing when it comes to earning money and running our businesses, God, step aside, please. This is my business. Yeah, but when we have a problem, God, you take care of that, because that's my thing. I can't do it. And where are you, by the way? You're supposed to be here, Like when the tsunami took place in Indonesia, said, where is God? And he couldn't stop this. All his children died, and they all just, they all drowned, So I asked them, I said, where was God when it was sunny and the waves were flowing naturally? That time there was no God. Suddenly when there's a tsunami, where is God? God, why didn't you just stop this? God says, when it was so nice, did you ever think about me? That when I made it so nice, when I didn't make the earth to convulse? But that you consider just scientific, probability mishaps, it's all happening accidentally, right? But when something wrong happens, suddenly everybody wants to blame God. So when I have debates with atheists, their whole argument is about the existence of evil. It's not about the existence of good. Why God doesn't exist? Or because evil exists? I said, how about God exists because good exists? No, we don't talk about good. We just want to know about evil. We'll talk about evil and the definition of evil and why they're so off base when they describe this. I'm just giving a simple example that you and I have been given this power of free will. And God is telling us that yes, there are thousands of religions out there. You know why? Because I've allowed you to do it. And I've allowed you to meddle and to get into sometimes the factors of religion and hide under the garb of religion like a chameleon. But don't worry. إِلَيْنَا مَرْجِعُهُمْ فَنُنَبِّئُهُم بِمَا عَمِلُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Indeed, God knows what lies in the hearts of people. What lies in their souls, He knows. نُمَتِّعُهُمْ قَلِيلًا ثُمَّ نَذَّرْهُمْ إِلَىٰ عَذَابٍ غَلِيظٍ. We allow them to enjoy for a short time, then we grab them and give them what they deserve. But what's elegant about our existence is the fact that God maintains the autonomy of my free will, and He doesn't alter it. And what's magnificent is that when God talks to me, He uses the institution of science and logic and rationality to convince me about the truth. He doesn't intrude within the physical systems to confuse me. So when we talk about miracles, you'll notice that miracles actually obey the laws of science. They don't violate the laws of science. All miracles, even prophetic miracles, obey the laws of science. For if miracles disobeyed the laws of science, then Allah is confusing me. For then He stops something from happening, He interjects, and then He leaves it. And then I have to figure out how did this happen, and He sort of just erases the scientific science. That's not true. What's amazing about science is today scientists know to the nth level of time, which we have called Planck's moment. It's a moment in time, where if you take a time, an hour, minute, second, millisecond, you can take it down 1 times 10 to the minus 43 seconds, which is the smallest particle of time known to man in the world of science. It's called Planck's moment. We are so smart that we can go to Planck's moment when the universe started, which happened billions of years ago, 12, 14, 13, whatever the numbers are, billions of years ago. And with the nth degree we can tell when hydrogen was formed, when carbon was formed, when oxygen was formed. SubhanAllah. Why? Because God has set a system in science that when things transact, even our conversation, they all leave an imprint somewhere, a footprint or an imprint in space somewhere. It's just a matter of having the right probes to read it, and we're able to actually catch it. And God is merciful, for He allows all transactions to be recorded, And that's why God says on Judgment Day, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى. You will see all your deeds. How? You will see it. By the way, this is not fictitious talk. Ask people who experience near-death experiences, people who fall from high floors, like buildings or mountains. They saw their entire life in a millisecond. From childhood to adulthood to the moment, and they described every moment like as if they were in it eternally. It wasn't like a flash where they just saw it in the past. No. They felt it, they experienced the emotion of that moment, though they could be 30 years of age. How do you experience 30 years of experiences in a few seconds? God says, by time, wal asr. I swear by this entity called time, which I created within a frame and I put you in it, that I swear by it, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Indeed, man is at a loss. Now, the Quran is negating here. Indeed, by time, mankind is at a loss. It's a negative verse. Let me explain very briefly the principles of the Quran. Whenever God speaks in the Quran, in a verse where He swears, number one, very, very important, meaning He is alerting to us, this is important among the laws. As you know, there are structures in law. It's like a teacher says, okay, today I'm going to give you a very important rule. Focus, because this rule sets the standard for all rules. You focus on it, it becomes fundamental, it becomes poignant, it becomes very critical. Why? Because it's what we call the axis of rules. So notice one of the rules in the Quran is whenever God swears, followed especially by a negation, which follows an exception, this is critical. It's the bedrock of laws. It's foundational. This 103rd chapter is foundational. We know this chapter as muhkam. It's decisive. It's not mutashabihat, it's decisive. It sets the standard for other laws. That's why I'm describing it. And I want us to know, because it's in keeping with the peace and justice. The universal peace and justice of Islam is built on this foundation. God swears by time, wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr. Khasara means loss. Khasara is a negation. And it starts with innal. Innal means it's decreed. There is no ambiguity in it. Whenever God starts with qad or inna, you will notice it's an expression in the Quran meaning indeed, certainly, decreed. You see? Innal insan, all of mankind, not Muslims, not women, not men, not whites, not blacks, not tall, not short, all of mankind. Innal insana lafi khusr, are in loss by time. Because look at us as a human race. We're built within a finite structure. Time, by the way, scientists will tell you, is a vector. It's a one-directional vector. When we talk about time, you cannot go to negative time. It's interesting. Even in quantum physics, when we talk, it actually traverses time. Quantum physics actually violates time, but still it's within the prescription of some superstructure called time. And you find you cannot go back in time. The time you and I experience, we cannot go back. It's very interesting. We can go back relative to other people's times, which is relative time, but my own actual entity time, I can't go back. It's a one-way vector. And God says that within this finite world, when you come to existence, the date of birth and the time that you were born, the second that you were born, it's fixed. You can't change it. There is nothing you and I can do to change the reality. We can go and change the birth dates and alter the birth certificates, but that's a lie. The truth is we were born at a certain moment in time and we cannot change it. And what's interesting is the minute we come into existence, we begin to grow. It's like yesterday I was at a place and one guy was leaving, he says, it was an interesting comment, he says, see you when you're older. The other one brother said to the other one, says, goodbye, see you when you're older. And I looked at him and said, that's a smart statement, it's a nice statement. Because it's true, because the minute he leaves, he comes back, you just got older anyway, because you're a few seconds older. And you can never stop getting old. You're always getting old. Right? People say, you're getting old. I say, why, you're not getting old? Like, who's not getting old? Tell me who's not getting old, right? Everybody's getting old. A baby just born is getting older. So God has built a system, and there's nothing you and I can do to stop it. And it's finite. And the finiteness of time, of course, is the fact that you and I can live for thousands of years. It's not a problem to God. We can live for millions of years. But God has designed a finite structure on this earth such that we age quickly. The environments are so carcinogenic, the stress in life, and the order with which we've been placed with trials and tribulations makes it very difficult to exist on this earth for too long. And God ages us. He takes our youthfulness away. He makes us old. He makes our hair gray, if any hair is left. Right? But He ages us. Allah الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء. He makes you weak. Allah الذي خلقكم من ضعف makes you weak. A baby is weak. ثم جعل من بعد, after weak, you become strong and you become mature. And God says after your maturity, we make you old and weak again. He creates as He wills. So there's this rise and fall for us in terms of strength and prowess. But of course, it's not a fall, because when we grow older, we're wiser. We have more experiences. We have more mental acuity. We have greater realizations. We actually, hopefully, closer to God than when we were born, right? So actually, it's not this, but from a physical point, it looks this, but it's actually this, right? Just peaks and then goes forever. So it's really good. There's nothing wrong with it. But God is merciful. He says, I make you old in time to help you. Why? Because God says, I take your distractions away. That when you're young and youthful and you're beautiful, you're so busy staring at the mirror. So I take it away, so you don't look at the mirror anymore. You start wondering, who are you? Why are you here? You start looking inside instead of outside. You introspect more than you extrospect, right? Because you start to reflect in yourself and say, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And my looks will fade. But what about my heart? What about my soul? What about my character? Who am I? Am I worthy that will exist to eternity because of the quality of a person I am, not my physical being that I have? Everybody has a beautiful physical being, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, God is merciful. So God once again says, by time man is at a loss. So we have a finite moment. Look, I speak to 20-year-olds all the time and they tell me, oh, I'm getting old. I smile, I say, if you think you're old, come to my age. But I say to them, I say, why are you thinking you're old? He says, well, brother, I need to secure my career, find me a spouse, have children, things don't look so clear right now. When I start turning 30, I'm starting to get old. I said, don't worry, life begins when you're 40. So you got plenty of time, but you're right though, you're right. Because look, even in the work field, if you're in your 50s or in your 60s, you're applying for a job, companies usually won't hire you unless they need somebody of that age, because they're going to say you're a liability. Because soon you're going to retire, why should I hire you? I'd rather hire the young blood who's cheaper, right? Less experience, cheaper, and I get more out of them because I've got many more years ahead. So notice how time eats away at us. That either we reach that moment, it's like for sisters, right? You have to, if you don't have children at an early age, it's difficult. The older you get, the harder it gets to have children. So there's a time factor. If you don't meet that time factor, then you don't meet your desires sometimes. Of course, some don't want to have children, but the point is, if you do, then you have to meet it early. If you want to establish your business well and be secure, such that by 50 you're retiring, it's not easy. You have to start very early. Because to reach that retirement age where you have enough dividends and you have enough of a nest egg is not a joke. It requires timing. So the minute we're lethargic and lazy, or we are what we call reckless with our timing, we start to lose focus, and what happens is time will catch us. It's like in school. If a student doesn't perform well in school and they're set back year after year, or they quit school and then they go back, you notice the older you get, the harder it is to study. It's like language. Children should learn language at an early age. Children absorb multiple languages at an early age. The older you get, it's harder to absorb languages. That's why we encourage children to learn multiple languages at a young age. once again, by time, man is at a loss. I'm expressing this with much explanations because I want us to understand. But Allah says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. And look around us. People, I give you a simple example. If you go online and see the chatter, people who type like on Twitters and so on, right? I had coffee today. I'm making tea now. Just went to sleep. Blanket was very nice. I said, okay. So this is 3D now, you know, it's amazing. I'm living a virtual reality here. And you watch television shows, so much rubbish on television, silly jokes, just so dumb. Hollywood turns out 8 out of 10 movies are dumb. 2 are smart. 8 out of 10 are dumb. Bollywood? 9 out of 10. But anyways, I don't want to belittle these industries, but you get my point. Dumb. They're repetitious. Who got married? Really? She got divorced? She went with that guy? Oh my God! Really? You know, but she doesn't fit that guy. I think it's better for the other guy, don't you think? Let's have a talk about it. Let's go to the coffee shop. Let's discuss it. It's very, very important for us. 2 hours they're talking about it. Who do you think will match this person? Like, what happened to you? Me? I'm perfect. Are you kidding me? I have no problems. Like, why are you worrying about everybody else? Because I love to worry about everybody else. How about yourself? Me? I'm perfect. I have no problems. You ask them a simple question like, Surah Al-Fatiha. Huh? What's that? Define Surah Al-Fatiha. Excuse me? Do you pray? Yes. Alhamdulillah, at least you're trying to pray. What does it mean? I don't know. I was told if I recite it, I'll go straight to paradise. It's Al-Fatiha, it opens the gates, isn't it? Opens the door. Actually, you don't know the meaning of it? I said, no. Why? So busy. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Man is at a loss. Examine. The Quran hits it on the nail and it says, لَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Most of mankind does not use their common sense. Many of us are like cattle. You know, with the leading cattle moves in one direction, we all move. It's like the fad society. Some new movie comes out, everybody's online waiting to see it. Every kid wants to dress up looking like Batman or Spider-Man or whatever, right? It's a fad. You know, when these, what is it called, the hunter games, whatever it is. Everybody's into it, yeah, we want to go into it, yeah, we want to watch it. Right, so it's like a fad. And Hollywood just keeps producing these fads, and it's like the most important thing in life, and you have to go and buy it. It's like when Frozen came out, right? Every child had to have something Frozen. Multi-billion-dollar industry. Because Disney creates its fantasies, and I'm not saying they're bad, by the way. These industries, entertainment industries, are brilliant. The way they produce these movies, the way they do animations, I think they're brilliant. They're incredible, the way they make these faces move, and these are all virtual creations, you know, on computers. But let's not make it our religion. And I think we have to prioritize it. Yes, there's a time to watch soccer and football and, you know, cricket and, you know, whatever the sport, basketball or rugby. But people are just religiously into it where they forgot themselves. Where when they're aged and they knew all the statistics of all the teams that they've ever won, and now they're about to die, you think the angels are going to ask you, so who was the best rugby team? No. You're not going to be asked it. You're going to be asked, I'm not big. Who's your Lord? Lord? What does that mean? Min kitabik. What's your law? Min rasulik. Who was your prophet? Did you follow him? Did you know why you were created? You think you came here just to be sporty and to have just entertainment till you grow old? Or did you have a mission? Was your mission, you know, to be a promoter of good? So, notice, if you examine the world today, what's driving our economy? Movies. Pornography. These are institutions that keep us busy. So when God says, indeed, man is at a loss, God is not exaggerating. He's telling us the truth. And He's warning you and me and saying, are you going to be one of them? Or are you going to come out of this madness and become real for what you were created for? So Allah says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. There's an exception now. Man is in a loss. There's an exception. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So the Quran now has set a standard. And here's a very important point. Whenever the Quran negates, followed by an exception, the Quran is telling you there is no room for argument. You cannot add more to it. When you negate something followed by an exception, what you've done is you've negated everything except this. Like La ilaha illallah, when we say there is no God but one. Our shahadatain, the first statement for Muslims is to say there is no God but one. La ilaha illallah. Every Muslim has to believe in this, otherwise they're not Muslims, right? Notice it starts with the word la. It starts with the word negation. No, I reject. Rejection, la ilaha illa. Illa is an exception now. What God is saying is, were he to say there is one God and he is one, you can say, what about two? What about three? Maybe this one, maybe that one. But if you say there is no God, none, I erase everything but one, you have left no room for argument. It's actually a very efficient way of reaching your point faster, more efficiently, to the point, and you can maintain and sustain it, but you have to speak the truth to be able to say that. So, when the Quran negates followed by an exception, it's leaving no room for arguments. So we as Muslims can argue very clearly that the prescription that comes after the negation of mankind being at loss due to time, then whatever comes there is the bedrock foundation of how you and I should be behaving. So God says you are at a loss by time except those who believe. Now here, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. What about the Christians, the Jews, the atheists, the agnostics, the Hindus, the Buddhists? What about them? Well, it includes them. Because within the prescription of belief, there is a trajectory. Iman has trajectories. For example, I could be born a Muslim. That doesn't put me in Iman. Amanu has a delineation point that yes, when you're a Muslim, it functions pragmatically within a higher scale, no question about that. But within the human race, there are Hindus right now who are going to the temple, who are questioning the integrity of the idols they're worshipping. And they're saying, how can God take this form? I am following it because my fathers followed it, but I'm having a problem with it. I'm doubting it. That doubt is a trajectory towards the truth. There's a questioning factor. We as Muslims cannot say, well, I was born a Muslim, that means I'm guaranteed paradise. No. Iman is a transaction of constant reflection. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ. You see, they spend money, for example, transaction. السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. Right? الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. They're reflecting, standing, sitting, laying on their sides. They're reflecting why they were created and what is this grand universe. They're constantly reflecting. They're constantly introspecting. They're constantly challenging themselves. They're constantly improving their faith. They're improving their prayer. They're improving their fasting. They're improving their charity. If that momentum of improvement is not there, then you're outside of Iman. So God says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And they're constantly doing good deeds. Amil Salih means they're promoting good. You'll notice that the best human being is one who promotes good. We'll discuss what good is. Of course, we've been describing it already. Good comes from God. And the ultimate good is from God, which is what? Selfless good. The kind of good that begins with God. When God created us, there were no strings attached. God, by the way, doesn't want our prayers. Allah doesn't need our prayers. If you and I pray to Him or we don't pray to Him, it does nothing to God. God is independent. But when you and I pray, the benefit is for you and I. It's for me when I pray. It's for my surroundings. It's for my family. It's for my people. It's for my society. So the benefit is only for me. Quran says, "In ahsantum, ahsantum, li anfusikum." In ahsantum, when you do good for yourselves. And if you don't, it's your loss. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you are responsible, you are liable, you will dictate your own destiny. I am there, I guide you, I monitor everything you do. I am not disconnected from you. Not even a leaf can fall from a tree without my permission. And certainly I respond to your prayers. And certainly, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I reply you when you pray to me. I do interject when you ask me to, but I leave it to you. I ask you and I command you to represent me on this earth. This is very elegant, brothers and sisters. Understand, please. Can you imagine for a moment your master has chosen you as the captain? There's a different attitude when you go to play a sport, and when the team owner says, you are the captain, I designate you as my representative of my team, you feel honored. You go out on the field and you play with maximum fullness because you feel honored to represent your team and you don't like to lose, right? Same thing, but on a much higher scale than sports, much higher scale than a business and making money, on a much grander scale, that the reward of such representation is eternal closeness, eternal paradise, eternal happiness, with the kinds that you and I cannot describe. Not the worldly ones, where if you and I are chosen as captains, and even if you're the number one team and we're making 7 figures, no comparison to that. For even that cannot give us happiness. For there are those team leaders who are very successful in sports and they're still drug addicts and they're still womanizers. Look at people like Tiger Woods, right? Unhappy with all the wealth he had, but he still had to go chase other women. But the point I'm trying to say is not that kind. The kind of tranquility, the type that doesn't harm anyone, the type that keeps taking the self to higher stages. That representation is the one God is talking about. He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا. Tawasaw, the root word is wasaya. Wasaya means to encourage, to enjoin. Like wasiya, like when you leave a will, I bequeath. Same root word is there. Tawasaw means to enjoin on each other. Now, what's the finest way to encourage others? Bil-haq, wa tawasaw bis-sabr. Haq meaning promotion of truth. Be truthful. Promotion, by the way, haq is the universal word for adl, for adalah, justice. Haq is the essence of justice. So here, tawasaw bil-haq also means promotion of justice. Meaning truthfulness and justice. And promotion of patience. Why patience? The sabr. Tawasaw the sabr. Sabr, oh my God. You want to see the, you know when they say the reins on a horse, a wild horse, or on a wild camel? Imam Ali alayhi salam says the reins, sabr. Sabr, the reins on a wild beast is patience. Patience meaning it tames you. When does patience come? It's a whole conversation, but God in the Quran says, Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salati. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Oh, you, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. All you who believe, ista'inu. Right? Bis-sabri was-salat. Enjoin within yourself, indulge within yourself, salah and patience. Sabr and salah. Patience and prayer. And God ends this verse by saying, Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Indeed, God is with the patient ones. It's a very different conversation when God is with someone versus you are with God. When God is with you, it's an extra expression in the Quran, meaning God is so pleased with this behavior. Unlike when you are with God, it's like going towards God. But when God is towards you, the expression of that character is supreme. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. God is with the patient one. To reach patience requires a broad vision, requires a long vision. A person with short-term vision can never be patient. It's innately designed. When you and I are impulsive, we're compulsive. And when you and I have characters that are where we want instant gratification, we have no patience, we lack it, you'll notice we'll become very irritated very easily. We become irrational, we become emotional, turbulent, and we swing almost like we are sort of having this bipolar characteristic, euphoria to sadness. What happens is that we lack the capacity of long-term vision, which requires reflection. See, long-term vision doesn't come for free. It requires reflection. Who am I? Why am I here? And you want to know long-term vision? Look at somebody who's older than you, especially very old. Go to them and look at them and ask them, how did you live? What did you do in your life? Tell me about your life, because the more they tell you, the more they're going to expose what you will experience. But no better thing in life than experience ourselves. But Allah has enabled us to experience something ahead of time through those who have been ahead of us in time. And that's brilliant. This is why history and projection of history and speaking with the older generation who's wiser than us in most cases, that when we talk to them, let's reflect on what did you learn from your mistakes. That's why in a society, when you have a young group of people and an old group of people making legislation in the community, it's the healthiest. Because the older generation is usually conservative. They are not quick in judgments. They take things slowly. It appears like they're slowing us down. It appears like they're resisting because they're set in their old ways. It's healthy, trust me. And then you've got the young generation that just wants to move, wants to make impulsive judgments immediately, wants instant answers now, very revolutionary. See, the older generation is very evolutionary. The younger generation is very revolutionary. And what happens is they collide. Usually the older generation trumps the younger because they are the financiers. They're usually the ones who pay. And the buck stops with the money. Right? But where you come up with the zeal of real movement is when the young generation adapts to the needs of the older generation. And you get that middle group of people called the moderates who understand both sides and they bring the best judgment forward. You find healthy societies are a combination of both. But notice once again the elements of time being used effectively in moving towards God in a progressive way by taking the scenarios of what's prevalent and maximizing their potentials with what we have. So we should never as believers eradicate what's present. When we have Christians and Jews and atheists around us, don't be disappointed. Consider that a blessing of God. And I'm a Muslim and I have diversity of people of other religions around me. It's a blessing of God. You might think, why God has allowed so many religions to exist? It's confusing us. That's one side. Look at the other side. Now you have diversity of thought, which requires you to question each other to come to the universal truth. I believe, when I was growing up in Africa as a child, 60% of our population was Muslim, 40% was Christian. I went to Catholic school as a child. I knew the catechism. As a child, my teachers were nuns and priests. And I was a Muslim, they were Christian. But I loved it. Some people say, but you go to a Christian school? Yes, because typically Christian schools, especially in third world countries, have better education than the public schools, right? That's typical. But the fact that when I came to America, and I grew with Christians and Jews and atheists, I grew around them. You might say, well, this is dangerous, because now you're growing in an environment that may confuse you, because now you may lose your identity. I believe it's what we do with our identity. We can insulate ourselves and purify ourselves and remain in a little cubicle and say, this is where I'm going to be and I'm going to remain pure till I drop dead. Or you can expose yourself to the elements and say, you know what, I'm going to survive this element and I'm going to get stronger and get greater immunity because I want to understand the diversities of life. And when you look at the injunctions in the Quran, it's actually Quran promotes the latter, not the former. Siru fil ard, go, travel. The Prophet said, gain knowledge. Utlub al-ilm min al-mahdi lillah. Acquire knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Talib al-ilm, faridatun. It's a requirement of every believer, every submissive believer to go. The Prophet said, even if you have to go to China, go to China. At that time, China was the furthest part of the world. He said, go to China, even if it means to go there. Go and gain the knowledge, because the more we travel, the more we see people, the broader our vision. And I'm telling you from experience, when I meet people who are well-traveled, they're more sophisticated. People who are well-traveled, who travel the world and who travel in other parts of the world, when you talk with them, you'll find their visions are broader. Their conversations are more inclusive. They're more respectful of others. They have a better vision of life. You'll always see that. People who've never traveled, who've stuck in their own places, they're not bad, but they're not as, what we call, endowed with broadness of vision, unless that one who's stuck learns the art of knowing the rest of the world through reading and watching and adapting through other means. But there is no greater experience than traveling. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, my introduction today, God is saying, accept those who do good deeds, illa alladhina amanu, right? Believe, do good deeds, and join on each other, truth, and enjoin on each other, patience. I leave us tonight on this. I was going to discuss, actually, given the time, the element of how do we promote justice, how do we promote the truth. You and I need to have a solid grasp of the fundamentals, as I mentioned, the usul. I'll describe, and many times people come with these stories about Iblis and Adam, the story of Adam. As I promised you, I'll introduce it tonight briefly. I'll continue with it tomorrow, because my time is up. You'll find that the whole story of Adam being created, given the Spirit, dwelling in the garden, but precisely before that, there's another creature called Iblis. Iblis is his name. Azazil, Shaitan, we call him Ash-Shaitan, but his real name is Azazil, Iblis. Actually, Iblis is his name. He is a creation made of intense fire. He's not an angel. Our Christian brethren say the devil was an angel, a fallen angel. He wasn't an angel. He was a creation made of intensely hot fire. وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ, Quran says, he was among the jinn. The angels are made of pure light. Jinns are made of intensely hot fire. Humans are made of clay. It doesn't matter what we're made up of. It could be plastic, could be rubber, could be fire, could be water. It doesn't matter. God says, I create as I will, and I can put life in it as I will. There's something very fascinating about, and I'm now touching on the essence of Tawasaw bil Haqq, enjoining the truth. The discussion about Adam, prophets, Quran, religions, Christianity, all of this is Tawasaw bil Haqq. We are enjoining, we are encouraging each other to reflect, to talk. Why? Because when we have strength in our belief system, then our transactions become easy. We're driven. It's like a businessman who has a very solid business plan. They know the market so well that they produce products that will sell very quickly because they understand their environments better and they're not experimenting. They have a clear vision of what they want to do. Okay, that's one. And the second is sabr, tawasaw bil haqq. And the second is sabr, patience. Patience has one critical component in it, and I will conclude tonight, is the component of trials and tribulations, losses. Patience, very, very powerful term. I believe people who have strong understanding of why they exist and where they're going tomorrow are able to practice patience. People who have clarity of vision with God, especially with God. I believe firmly no one can be more patient than the one who knows God, the one who submits to God. This is why Karbala, Imam Hussein والسلام, is such an excellent example of sabr. While his family is being butchered, they're taunting him. He was a prince yesterday, today he's cornered in the middle of this desert and he's going to be beheaded. Yet his patience is impeccable. Like in the annals of history, when the enemies were taunting him, he didn't say anything. He just looked at them, and when he spoke, he was succinct to the point, and he made sure that his mission was accomplished. And he was so patient that while his infant even was killed with an arrow, and the arrow actually pierced his arm, he looked up, he says, Ridam li qada wa tasliman li amri. My Lord, we are satisfied by your decree and we submit to your command. That power, my God, many of us on earth would fail. That's why Imam Hussein saying, these 72 companions of mine in Karbala are the finest. Why? Because they were patient. They knew they'd be massacred. They knew their families would be killed. But because they have such clear vision of God, they clearly understand why they exist. And they know that even if they build palaces on earth, they will crumble. For the ultimate mission is not that, but to come to God with clean, upright hearts, to say, I sacrifice, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. My Lord, we recognize you so much, so well, that look, in our actions while the world was throwing money at us, trying to get us to submit to the satanic elements, we turned them down. We refused them because we were ready to give our souls, our children, our happiness for you, God. God says this is the reason. You cannot do that without patience. You cannot. Patience, even Luqman is saying to his son, Ya bunayya aqim as-salah, wa'mur bil ma'roof, wanha 'anil munkar, wasbir 'ala ma asabak, inna dhalika min 'azmil umur. My son, maintain prayers, aqim as-salah, promote good, forbid evil, and be patient with the trials that will come to you. Indeed, this is a difficult task. Inna dhalika min 'azmil umur. Often we will get angry, we will turn to God, we will complain to God, we will stop praying, we will do something to get angry. God says, that's your trial. Sure, we fail often, but let's encourage each other. Tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. I'll discuss this in elements of why Adam was created, why Iblis was placed. These are all foundational, not just stories, but there's an essence behind it, that though the devil is made up of intense fire, he was arrogant. He was arrogant, and when God created the human race, God says in the Quran, I shaped them out of black mud. Mankind is made of black mud. And Shaitan says he's a mud creature. I'm better. God says you are in my dominion. You dare to pretend to worship me, and you belittle my creation? Get out of my face. God is setting a standard that it doesn't matter you're human, a jinn, an angel, anything. You are arrogant, you're gone. How many of us are arrogant in this world? If you think Shaitan is arrogant, walk around earth and see how much arrogance. The way we are with stiff necks walking around like there's no greater creature than us, it's prevalent in society, isn't it? Show off. Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. God is setting a standard. This is why I love the Quran. Quran is telling me, look, this is another creature. Don't think that the laws of humbleness and arrogance are only among humans. God says even atoms must submit. So if you dare to claim you love me, then you obey my command. Then look around you, my creation is mine. Love it, admire it, respect it, learn from it. Don't damn it, but grow with it and teach it and lead it and take it closer to me. Invite them. How? With wisdom. I conclude on that tonight. May Allah give us the tawfiq, inshallah. Simple example of Imam Ali alayhi salam says to Malik al-Ashtar, continuing, he says, never say to yourself, oh Malik, I am their Lord. This is, the governor who's going to be the governor of Egypt. He says, I am their Lord, their ruler, and all in all over them, and that I must be obeyed submissively and humbly. Imam is saying to the governor, don't say such things. Exactly in consonance with the way the story of Iblis is. Humble. Why was the Holy Prophet the greatest? He was the most humble human being. All prophets were humble. Jesus, peace be upon him, was humble. Moses was humble. Abraham was humble. David was humble. Yaqub were humble. Yusuf was humble. They were all humble. God loves humble people. To be humble, you have to know who's your master. I end with this. He says, if you have such thoughts, Imam says, it will unbalance your mind, will make you vain and arrogant, it will weaken your faith in religion, it will make you seek support of any power other than of God. If you ever feel any pride or vanity on account of your sway and rule over your subjects, then think of the supreme sway and rule of the Lord over the universe. See, keeping this God constantly in your mind. and extent of His creations, the supremacy of His might and glory, His power to do things which you cannot even dream of doing, and His control over you, which is more dominating than that which you can ever achieve over anything around you. Such thoughts will cure your mental weakness, will keep you away from vanity and rebellion against God. It will reduce your arrogance and haughtiness, and will take you back to the sanity which you had foolishly deserted. This is an advice of an Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib والسلام, to his appointee, who was appointed governor, who was Malik al-Ashtar, who was killed. Look at this advice. Let's take this advice to us. The Imam is also advising us. You're the president of your organization, you're the leader of an organization, you're the owner of your company, same behavior. May Allah give us the tawfiq, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم وآخر الدعوة الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.